Brand new babies are one of the most fragile creatures on Earth. They require constant care, constant attention. You have to be pretty delicate with them because they're a very fragile item. Now, of course, they're not like glass. They're not going to completely shatter. And I'll never forget one of the first things I noticed when we had our son was just how much more rough the hospital staff was with the babies when they're poking them and prodding them and getting measurements and all these things. I just imagined them being a lot more delicate, I guess. Anyways, you still have to treat them with the utmost care and respect, especially in those first few months of life. They're still fresh to the world. They're learning how to breathe. They're learning how to eat. They're learning how to do all these new things. They're constantly overstimulated. And above everything else, they're relying on their mom and their dad to take care of them and feed them and nourish them and provide them with everything that they need because they can't do it at all on their own. And because they're so fragile, every little thing that happens, you treat it like it's the biggest possible issue. You're not sure if it's normal. You're not sure. There's no handbook. So everything is an emergency when you're a new parent. And that's likely what the nurse working at the St. John's Hospital in Maplewood, Minnesota was thinking at about 5 p.m. on January 31st, 2024, when she got a call from a distraught mother claiming that her child had symptoms of seizures, was twitching, and just was acting completely different than they normally did, and wasn't eating either. So obviously the nurse said they needed to rush him into the hospital and get him checked out right away. So that's what they did. They rushed him in. And after about a month in the ICU, little baby Jackson will have passed away after only about 15 weeks of life. Truly tragic story. Let's check it out.
Oh my God. Let me show you what I got. This beat is so hot. Oh my God.
Sup, sobers? Welcome back to another Sobering Stories episode where we talk about the darkest side of addiction and some of the tragic stories that it leaves behind. We've got another super tragic story this week. The main reason I wanted to cover this story is because of how truly similar it is to my situation and my story. There is some differences, obviously, and I'm grateful that my situation didn't turn out like this one. But this one just hit me. It hit me right where it hurts, and it kind of gave me a little bit of gratitude, but also put a lot of fear and sadness and regret in my heart, just thinking about what could have been. This case hits me so close to home. This case is very similar to mine, not exactly the same, but very similar. And it got me thinking about things that have happened to me and things in my past. And it just makes me grateful that I was given the opportunity to turn my life around, to choose sobriety, and to work on being a better dad and a better human being overall. It's also very triggering for me, so I can understand if it's triggering for you. So I just wanted to give you a trigger warning. This story obviously does have to do with babies, unfortunately, being unalived, and a lot to do with addiction and substance abuse, as always. So if that's not for you, then I recommend maybe skipping this episode, but just remember, we'll be back next week with a new one. If there's things that you notice or questions you have or red flags that pop up for you, drop them in the comments below, you guys. I want to hear what you have to say. All right, now to start this story off, let's talk about Mark Russell Forster. He's 39 years old. He grew up in Henderson, North Carolina. Looks like he went to North Vance High School there and kind of just stayed in that area. Looks like he worked there for a while, ended up working at Carolina Bistro as a bar manager. And then sometime in around 2016, he moves over to Asheville, North Carolina, which is sick. I mean, I've heard Asheville is really cool. I would love to check it out. I'm a hipster, and I hear it's a pretty cool little hipster town. So I can see why there's a draw to move there, especially because it seems like he's really into the drinking, partying scene, and Asheville's known to be a pretty hip town. A lot of things happening there, a lot of music. He's very interested in music. It looks like there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Asheville. So he moves over to Asheville and starts to kind of make a new life and situation over there. While he's in Asheville, he works at this place called the Biltmore Historical Landmark. I'm not sure if it's like a hotel or something, but it says it's a winery. I'm not exactly sure what this place actually is, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So I don't know what he was doing there, but it's a winery, so I'd assume he was working with wine, maybe learning about wine. Anyways, something he was doing while he's living in Asheville. And then on December 3rd, 2018, which is just a couple of years later, his mom passes away. It seems like that definitely had a little bit of an effect on him. And then after that, it looks like he's maybe looking for a fresh start. Not really sure what drove him out to Clayton, Wisconsin. There's kind of like a dark period of time here. Not really sure. He wasn't posting a lot. Not a whole lot going on for me to find. But he moved to Clayton, Wisconsin, moving over to the Midwest, getting off the coast. Continues working, but he's continuing to work at places that are in the bartending, bar kind of industry. So alcohol stuff. He's constantly around alcohol. He's constantly serving, bartending. He was working at a winery prior to this. So just a consistent theme. And then obviously living in Asheville for a little while, like I said, it's definitely known to be more of a hip, kind of a partier city. So probably was out doing a lot of stuff there. And then same time in 2016, he started working as a sound engineer for this band. I'm not sure if it's like a local band. Never heard of them myself. It seems like it's kind of a local group called the Artemis Pyle Band. And so he does sound for them in the local area, and they're playing a lot at bars and places like that. So again, still in that kind of nightclub scene or nightlife scene, just consistent. It just seems to be a theme throughout his life, starting from graduating high school and onward. I did a lot of digging, but I wasn't able to find much about this time period where he lived in Wisconsin. Sometime in 2019, he meets a young lady named Amanda, and she lives in Minnesota. So he ends up moving up to Minnesota with her. I'm pretty sure she lives in the Red Wing area at this time, which is all very close to Minneapolis, kind of like a suburb, I guess you'd say. But anyways, very close to Minneapolis, just a little bit outside of that. So he's living with her. This relationship does not seem to last very long, though. Not really sure why. Maybe Mark doesn't really have his shit together. I really don't know. It's just all speculation for me, so I'm not going to give you guys speculative stuff. But regardless, doesn't last that long. But at this point, Mark decides he's going to stay in Minneapolis, in the same Minneapolis area up in Minnesota. And he starts working for Curtis Productions, doing sound for them, something that he's already doing for, the Artemis Pyle Band. And then he's also working at a place called Mermaids. It's like a bowling alley, event center. They've got a bar there, and he's a bartender, obviously. Just kind of living, getting by, doing his thing. And at some point, he meets a young lady named Sam. I'm not sure how long he was at this Mermaids place, but shortly after that, he ends up working at a place called Axel's. It's a steakhouse where he's also a bartender there. That's what he does for work. He's a bartender, which if you are tracking his story here, you're going to reasonably assume that he's probably developing a pretty serious addiction to alcohol, or at least it's heavily ingrained in his daily routine and life, not only his work life, but probably his personal life as well. And then, I thought that might just be speculation and assumption, but a lot of the posts that you see once he meets this young lady, Sam, it's a lot of them just going out, drinking, hanging out at bars, enjoying Friday nights together. And I mean, even the clothes that he wears are all alcohol related. He's got a bourbon hat he wears a lot. Just, it's obvious that it's a very significant theme throughout his life, and we can reasonably assume that alcohol is a big piece of his life. This young lady, Sam, she's from the White Bear Lake area, which is also in Minnesota, very close to Minneapolis, probably another suburb of Minneapolis, kind of, but it's on the northern side. She grew up in this area. She still lives in this area. She's pretty close with her family, it looks like. From all the pictures I saw, it looks like she's very close with her family. While she's living in this area, it looks like she has a pretty serious boyfriend at the time, and then they end up having a young daughter, and her name's Shayla. And she's a beautiful little girl. They seem super happy. Not really sure what happens between the two of them, but it looks like something doesn't work out. And in December of 2022, the two of them split up. And it looks like she's dead set on making things better for her future and for her daughter's future. And we've got this post talking about how she knows better, so she wants to do better for moving forward. So it just seems like she's ready to make some changes. And for whatever reason, maybe this last guy had some issues that she didn't want around her daughter. But things change when you become a parent. Like, a lot of things change. Your expectations change. What becomes important to you changes. And when your partner isn't aligning with you on those things, it's very easy for couples to separate at that time. At least from my experience, we had a lot of struggles trying to integrate both of our wants and needs and the needs of a brand new baby, and kind of just like figuring out how all of this fit into our lives and our purpose. So I can understand how difficult it is, and I can understand why it's so common for people to split up when they do have a baby. So I'm assuming that's what happened with them, but Sam's determined to find something better and move on and find a better future for herself and her daughter. She's still living in the White Bear Lake area, and she's working at Subway there. Sounds like things are pretty normal for her. She's just a single mom working, trying to support herself and her daughter. And she eventually does meet Mark. The two of them connect somehow. And it looks like they just hit it off super well. The two of them are spending all kinds of time together. The two of them are dancing. They're going out drinking. Looks like they're just constantly with each other and enjoying each other's company. They make Friday date nights. They make time for each other. And it just looks like everything's going great. Even friends and family make lots of comments talking about how happy they are to see that she seems so happy and that she seems to have found a really awesome guy, and so everything's going great with the two of them. So fast forward up to March 2023, Sam actually finds out that she's pregnant. They're going to have their own little baby now. So they're just adding to this beautiful little family, adding another little member. And I'm not sure when they find out, but sometime in September, she posts about how fast the pregnancy's gone by, and she's so excited there's only 12 weeks left in the pregnancy. Then they're going to have their new little baby boy here. And it doesn't look like they knew quite what the name was going to be. Looks like they had a couple of different name options. But they finally settle on the name Jackson Dallas Forster. Super cool name. I love it. And on December 6th, 2023, baby Jackson is born. Everybody's so excited to welcome him to the world. Mom and dad seem super excited to be adding to their family. And little daughter Shayla is super excited to be a big sister now. So everybody's just super excited. Obviously a big transition for them, starting this whole new journey with a new baby. But they seem super excited about it and they seem ready to handle it. Sam takes some time off work, but she does go back to work after a few weeks. Doesn't sound like she had a whole lot of time off, honestly. She is working at Subway still. And then Mark is still working as a bartender. So their hours are definitely different. And with a new baby, I know how that goes. You kind of just split up your time, which probably is really difficult because finding sleep and then alternating schedules and everything can definitely be a challenge. But I mean, with two people working, that's one of the only ways you can really split it up is for one person to work kind of in the evening. The other person works more in the morning. And then they kind of overlap a little bit in the middle and at night. And there's a little bit of time in between. But other than that, then there's always somebody at least watching the baby, taking care of the baby. So Mark would be working super late, usually didn't get home until about 1 or 1:30. And then usually Sam would be working earlier in the morning. She'd leave at about 8 o'clock, usually work until about 1-ish. And then she'd be home so that she could take over and they could kind of swap places. On January 31st, same as always, Mark comes home from work. He gets home about 1 o'clock in the morning. And at that point in time, he kind of takes over the care of Jackson, which at this point, he's only about 7 weeks old. So they're not sleeping through the night at this point. They kind of wake up and eat and hang out for a few hours and then they go back to sleep. So there's always got to be somebody there ready to take over and they've got to be ready to go, you know? Now with Mark home, Sam's going to go to bed. She's got to get up in the morning. She's got work and then she's also got to get her daughter Shayla to school. So she's working hard to make sure that she's getting some sleep in while Mark's taking over. So she goes to bed and then she wakes up at about 6 a.m. to get her daughter ready for school and then to get herself to work. Now, since Mark is home, he takes over watching Jackson. It's about 1 a.m. and it's said that he was reported to have drank about 5 drinks starting at 1 a.m. And then it said he also smoked a bowl at some point. So I don't know if you guys have done that before, but for me anyways, that's one of the fastest ways for you to black out is to smoke a bowl while you're already really drunk. That just crossfades you and you immediately, I don't know what it is, just the mixture of the two substances just makes you immediately black out sometimes, especially if you've already drank a lot. Already starting off on a bad note here, but Mark doesn't seem to remember a whole lot from the evening. Sounds like he really doesn't remember putting himself or Jackson to bed. But he knows that both of them went to bed at some point because, well, Jackson woke up in his bed and Mark woke up in his bed. He wakes up the next morning at about 6 a.m. because Jackson's hungry, he's crying, he needs food. So he feeds him at 6 a.m. He said he puts him in his swing so he can hang out in his swing for a little bit. And then he ends up going back to sleep until about 10 a.m. where he wakes up again for him to feed him. That's pretty much what babies do. They sleep, they eat, and that's it. And they're cute. But that's all the time. But anyways, baby wakes up, he eats about 10 a.m. and then it's not really sure what happened after that. Mark doesn't seem to really remember. And in my opinion, it said that he only had like 5 drinks starting at 1 a.m. But then he went to bed and then woke up. And then, I don't know, it sounds like he was still drunk, but to me, in order to still be drunk, like that drunk, you'd have to keep drinking. So he doesn't admit to drinking anymore during the day, like in the morning the next day, but I feel like he probably was, to be honest. Especially if he didn't feel that good, he probably was. That's speculation, that's just what I think. Now, fast forward a little bit, Sam gets home from work. She's a little bit concerned about what's going on with him because the two of them are both asleep in the chair, but I know from my experience, like, when you have a baby, you sleep when the baby sleeps. Otherwise, you don't sleep. That's probably what was happening. But the two of them were asleep in like their chair in the living room when she got home. And then when baby Jackson woke up, he wasn't necessarily acting really strange, but he was not acting like himself. It wasn't anything super alarming, but it wasn't anything that was also normal. So he looked a little bit blue. His eyes just didn't seem like he was really all there, you know? And then on top of that, he was refusing to eat, which really concerned Mom. He hadn't refused to eat like this before, and it all seemed kind of out of nowhere. Around 2:30 p.m., Jackson wakes up. He spits up a little bit, but then he just goes right back to sleep, which Mom says is completely unusual. That's not like him at all. He sleeps a lot, but not this much, and he certainly doesn't just spit up and then go right back to sleep. So something's up. Something's weird. Then about 5 p.m., Jackson wakes up again. He starts crying, what Mom says is a completely different cry than normal. And on top of that, he starts tensing up and arching his back super hard. One of his arms is completely pinned to his side, very straight, while the other arm is completely flailing around like crazy. Looks like he's having a little seizure. On top of everything else, he's blue in color and something is not right. Mom is super concerned. So she calls the nurses line at the St. John's Hospital in Maplewood, which is where we started our story. And they immediately tell her, you need to get this baby to an emergency room now. So they rush baby Jackson down to the emergency room at St. John's Hospital. They conduct some scans, they do some exams, and those scans come back showing some serious brain bleeds in baby Jackson's head. Now, these brain bleeds aren't normal for a little 7-week-old baby. Obviously, this is something traumatic that happened to him, and the hospital staff immediately suspects some sort of child abuse. They're not sure who or what or anything, but they suspect some sort of child abuse. But immediately they knew that Jackson needed to be transferred to the Masonic Children's Hospital, which was not too far away, but they obviously have better care there. So they send them over to the Masonic Children's Hospital, and they let the police know that they think there's something going on with child abuse here. Parents are both pulled aside and questioned. And not only that, but Sam starts asking Mark questions about like, yo, what the hell happened? Like, what did you do last night? Did something happen? Because they're saying that there's child abuse or he has a traumatic head injury, but obviously you're not telling me that something happened. And Mark, all he has to say, unfortunately, is that I'm honestly not too sure and I feel really awful because I got really drunk last night and I don't remember. When asked by physicians what might have happened, he says, I'm not really sure. I wasn't in the right frame of mind last night. I may have dropped him or something like that, but I'm really not too sure. The unfortunate thing is that we'll never truly know what happened, but what doctors deduced from the injuries that they saw that baby Jackson sustained was it was consistent with him being shaken and with him having some sort of traumatic head injury, like being dropped from really high or being hit really hard in the head, which is just so sad, so truly sad, especially knowing that's his own son. And then to go even further, like, you know, alcohol changes people. If he was blacked out like he says he was, then that's truly, truly tragic because he woke up, he has no memory of this even happening, but he's going to have to live the rest of his life knowing that he had something to do with or directly it caused his son's death. Obviously, police decide they have to do something about this because something happened to this baby. Now, because this case is still ongoing, police were just investigating everything at the hospital. Nothing was really set in stone at the time. It wasn't until about a month later, baby Jackson was in the ICU for a little while, but he was in real bad shape. And it didn't seem like he was actually going to make it. But on March 22nd, at about 15 weeks old, young baby Jackson ended up dying from the traumatic brain injuries that he incurred and from just the abuse that he had sustained. So truly tragic ending to the story. And then in terms of Mark, the police did eventually charge him with second-degree murder. It doesn't sound like he's in custody yet, but he has been charged via a warrant for the murder. So it looks like he is going to be having to face trial and figure out this whole situation now. And unfortunately, it's all because he decided that he wanted to get drunk when he got home from work, and he decided to drink just a little bit too much. And that could be the difference between literally having one drink more and not that one drink more. And then on top of that, he smoked a bowl, so that's definitely going to add to it. And it's going to increase the likelihood of you losing consciousness. Just made some poor choices that night with a really, really fragile, delicate human being in his direct care. And who really knows what truly happened that night? I mean, maybe he got upset with the baby for crying and in his subconscious state really did hurt the baby, or shook him to try and get him to stop crying. All he really says is that he must have dropped him on the way to taking him into bed, but he really doesn't know. And at this point, we really never will know. All we really do know is that Mark made some poor choices that night. And it sounds like he made those poor choices because he had a habit and a lifestyle that was fairly consistently revolving around alcohol. And it seems like, in my opinion, he had an alcohol addiction. He couldn't put it down even to be able to take care of his 7-week-old son, to make sure that he took the best possible care of him. Just absolutely, truly sad. And to kind of tie this back to my story, I didn't abuse my son like that, but I did get really drunk just like he did. I blacked out and forgot to feed my son. I had tried to feed him, but because I was having trouble doing it, I just tried to put him down instead. And then he ended up crying himself to sleep. I ended up blacking out, not even having any idea what was going on. And my partner came home from work and she realized that something was wrong. My son wasn't waking up like he normally would. She just was really, really concerned. And on top of it all, I'm blackout drunk. And so I'm just really grateful that my story could be this story. And so reading this story shook me to the core, you guys. Like, it solidified me in my sobriety even more than I already was, but it just shook me. I know, because I've been through this exact situation, that it is easy for you to make mistakes when you're addicted to alcohol. And you don't think that you have an addiction, and it's just kind of a lifestyle, and it's just kind of something that's accepted. Because alcohol use is so accepted in our society, it makes things like this easier to happen because you lose control over your addiction, because you don't even realize that it is an addiction, because nobody's telling you it is. Nobody's showing you that what you're doing is making the wrong choices. So that's kind of how I felt at that point in my journey. I was actually trying to quit drinking so I could be a better dad. And I, in my alcoholic brain, just thought I could get away with drinking for the day because my girlfriend went back to work for the day. So that alcoholic mind is so powerful, and it can make you do things that are completely unconscionable to most people. But that addicted mind is just a different mind. It's a different brain, and it operates differently. So this story can happen to anybody, and I know that because it happened almost to me. If it can happen to me and it can happen to Mark, it can happen to you. So just be mindful of your substance use. If you need help trying to get sober, if you need advice on how to get sober, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram. But honestly, sobriety is the best thing that I ever did with my life. I'm a better dad now because of it. I'm a better partner because of it. I love myself more, and I feel like I'm a better version of myself now because I've sobered up. I highly recommend sobriety. It's a great choice for me, and I think that it honestly is a great choice for anybody. And I feel like the stigma around alcohol needs to change. It's such a highly addictive, dangerous substance where people are completely different. They're not even themselves, even after a few drinks. So I feel like the laws around alcohol need to change, but also I feel like more than that, the stigma and the way that we talk about alcohol and how dangerous it is needs to change as well. Because things like this can happen, and a beautiful baby boy's life was snuffed out at only 15 weeks. Who knows what great things he could have gone on to do and what an amazing human being he would have been. Rest in paradise, little Jackson Dallas Forster. And sharing this story hopefully will help other people, hopefully spread awareness about the idea that this is a possibility, especially for new parents, and just gives you something to be mindful of if you're a new parent. If you guys need anything, if you guys need help, whatever, I'm always here. But that's all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening to the story. As of right now, there's really no updates. Mark hasn't been arrested, and he's simply just being charged. So still a fresh case, though. This is all recent. Happened in March when baby Jackson died, and then the charges have only recently come about as of like June or July. So everything's still very fresh in the news. If you want me to keep updated on the case, let me know. Drop in the comments. I'll keep updated on this case, and we'll keep you informed about what's going on and kind of how everything resolves. As for Sam, as of August 13th, I believe, she's in another relationship with somebody else. She's moving on. Unfortunately, she experienced a tragic loss that was not her fault in any way. There's not a whole lot she really could have done or changed about what happened. And so my heart goes out to her for sure. But it seems like she's trying her best to move on and kind of just move forward. She still has a young daughter to take care of. And not only that, but her young daughter just lost her little brother too. Very tragic situation, very sad story. But what do you guys think about this story? Like, what do you think could have gone differently that could have avoided this whole situation? Drop it in the comments below, you guys. I want to hear what you have to say. And as always, if you guys need help, I am here for you. But thanks again for listening. If you want to check out one of my other sobering stories, then I highly recommend this one right here. This is the one I posted last week. And if you just want to binge watch all of them, then I've got a playlist right over here. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then definitely do that. That way it'll let you know when I post new episodes, which is every week, and you'll never miss one. But anyways, I'm DJ Petrovsky. Later, sobers.
Oh my God. Let me show you what I